Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Abhineet Shukla and with me is Saira Mujtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils Bundelkhand Expressway in Jalon district of Uttar Pradesh, says it will give major boost to connectivity and industrial development in the region. Over 5 crore people received benefit of e-Sanjeevani teleconsultation, says Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia. US decides not to impose sanctions against India for purchasing S-400 missiles from Russia. US President Joe Biden says US will not cede Middle East to China or Russia. Meets 9 Arab leaders during his first trip to Middle East. Aishwarya Pratap Singh Tomar strikes gold at ISSF Shooting World Cup in Changwon. India top medal tally with 4 gold, 4 silver and 1 bronze so far. In badminton, PV Sindhu to face Wang Ji of China in women's singles title clash of Singapore Open tomorrow. And in cricket, India to take on host England in third and final ODI in Manchester tomorrow. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Bundelkhand Expressway at Kaithari village in Orai Tehsil of Jalon district in Uttar Pradesh today. Speaking on the occasion, Mr. Modi said, the Bundelkhand Expressway will give major boost to connectivity and industrial development in the region. The Prime Minister said after 2017, connectivity reached to the small cities in Uttar Pradesh. He said, now every part and region of the state is getting connected by road and by air as well, which reflects the spirit of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas in real terms. Mr. Modi said, identity of Uttar Pradesh is changing as the state is developing in every field. Speaking about the balanced development, Mr. Modi said, now development is reaching every part of the state, ending the imbalance of growth and leading to realization of social justice.
यूपी के जिन जिलों को पिछड़ा मानकर उन्हें अपने हाल पर छोड़ दिया गया था, वहां जब विकास हो रहा है तो ये भी एक तरह का सामाजिक न्याय है। गांव-गांव को सड़कों से जोड़ने के लिए तेजी से काम करना, घर-घर तक रसोई गैस का कनेक्शन पहुंचाना, गरीब को पक्के घर की सुविधा देना, घर-घर में शौचालय बनाना, ये सारे काम भी सामाजिक न्याय को ही मजबूत करने वाले कदम है.
Talking about the water problem of the region, Mr. Modi said, many irrigation projects along with Har Ghar Jal scheme will end several problems of Bundelkhand.
मेरा बुंदेलखंड के साथियों से एक और आग्रह भी है. आजादी के 75 वर्ष के अवसर पर देश के अमृत सरोवरों के निर्माण का संकल्प लिया. बुंदेलखंड के हर जिले में भी 75 अमृत सरोवर बनाए जाएंगे. ये जल सुरक्षा के लिए, आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए बहुत बड़ा काम हो रहा है. मैं आज आप सभी से कहूंगा, इस नेक काम में मदद के लिए ज्यादा से ज्यादा संख्या में आगे आए. अमृत सरोवर के लिए गांव-गांव कार सेवा का अभियान चलना चाहिए.
Talking about the development projects in the country, Mr. Modi said, with Gati Shakti Master Plan, architecture is being built of the country of 21st century. He counted many projects which were started by the state government and completed by the same government. The Prime Minister asserted, by delivering the projects before time, they are respecting people's mandate and their confidence in them. He urged people to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and remember the heroes of our freedom struggle in the coming month. Addressing the gathering, the Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath said that this expressway will help in establishing Jhansi and Chitrakoot node of defence corridor. The 296-kilometer long 4-lane Bundelkhand Expressway, which has been constructed at a cost of around 14,850 crore rupees, passes through 7 districts: Chitrakoot, Banda, Mahoba, Hamirpur, Jalon, Auraiya and Etawah. Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia said, more than 5 crore people received the benefit of e-Sanjeevani teleconsultations on Saturday. Using this innovative digital medium, patients consult doctors and specialists on a daily basis to seek health services. In a tweet, Dr. Mandavia said, the poor, living in remote areas of the country are getting expert doctors' advice at health and wellness centers. He said eSanjeevani is the best example of digital health and people can take advantage of eSanjeevani teleconsultation through the app.
In a big relief for India, the US has decided not to impose sanctions under its stringent law countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act or CAATSA for purchasing S-400 missile systems from Russia. After New Delhi's purchase of the S-400 air defense system, there was a threat of US sanctions, but the Indian government had always been confident of bypassing these. This has been made possible as the US House of Representatives passed a legislative amendment waiving off any punitive sanctions on India under CAATSA. The move comes after US House of Representatives approved Indian origin Congressman Ro Khanna's amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act (NDAA) on Thursday. Reacting to the development, Ro Khanna said, the move will further strengthen US and India's defense partnership. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on US House of Representatives waiver for India from CAATSA. In conversation are Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, and Manas Pratim Bhuyan, journalist.
Ambassador Mukherjee, India signed a $5 billion deal with Russia to 5 units of S-400 air defense missile systems in 2018, notwithstanding a warning from the administration of the then US President Donald Trump. And the administration then had said that the deal could invite US sanctions against India. The US had said that, in fact, India could face sanctions under the provisions of the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which is in short known as CAATSA. And India has all along been maintaining that its decision on military procurement will continue to be guided by its national interest and requirement. Now, after nearly 4 years of the deal between India and Russia on the procurement of the missile systems, the US House of Representatives passed a legislation amending the provisions of the act, providing for waiver to India against CAATSA, saying that, in fact, India needs the weapon systems to defend itself from countries like China. How do you see the amendment and what does it signal?
Thank you very much. You've raised some very important issues which are of fundamental importance. So let me answer them one by one. First of all, when we decided to go in for the S-400, we had already explained to our principal strategic ally, that is the United States, that this defense system is absolutely imperative for India to acquire, given our hostile neighborhood and given the threat that we face from China, where the Chinese nuclear arsenal is much larger than ours. And even on conventional, while we have a balance, they still could have an advantage with regard to weapons and equipment. And hence the S-400 is of vital importance to us. At that point of time, President Trump signaled to us that this would attract sanctions under CAATSA, but his Secretary of State and the Secretary of State for Defense had encouraged us to go through the process, which we did. Then came the US election, the downfall of Kabul, and the Ukraine conflict. It is a great testimony to our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, and our foreign policy that although we took a very calibrated position on Ukraine, our position is understood clearly by the United States that India's principal adversary is China, which wants to destroy India with its aggressive and militaristic behavior. And therefore, India believes that to counter the Chinese threat, S-400 is essential. The CAATSA waiver that we have got now to the House of Representatives, as you said, completely vindicates India's position and indicates also that United States fully appreciates the threat that China poses to India and therefore has given the waiver so that we are better able to defend ourselves in a hostile neighborhood where the Chinese could take advantage of the stalemate in the Ukraine conflict to try to start some new aggression in its neighborhood, and where better but across the line of control, where they have already strengthened the infrastructure. And if you remember, the US Defense Secretary in the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore had given an open warning to India that they were very concerned by the strengthening of infrastructure on the Chinese side of the line of actual control.
Yeah, Ambassador Mukherjee, you made a very valid point actually when you talked about multiple threats that India has been facing from China as well as from our western border from Pakistan. But do you also see that this amendment at the U.S. House of Representatives also reflects India's growing global stature? I mean, no matter who is threatening us, no matter what kind of warning anyone is throwing at us, but India actually stands by its position and its national interest actually. I mean, India has all along been maintaining that our military procurement will be guided by our national interest and will not, agree to any unilateral sanctions. And that has been a very, very steadfast position by India. And this amendment actually recognizes India's long-standing position in a way. So notwithstanding the security environment or external threats that we have been facing, but the key point is that we have a policy and we will definitely continue to just stick to it. Don't you think so?
I fully agree with you. Our stature has indeed increased. If you remember, there had been rumors that is India going to be invited to the G7 or not, which no right-thinking person ever believed. India was a very honored invitee at the G7, and our Prime Minister made some very important points at the G7 summit. India is going to take over the presidency of the G20, and that is going to be an extremely important policy matter for us because people are increasingly looking to India as a country be acceptable to both sides, to the Russian Federation and to Ukraine and to the West. And as president of G20, perhaps play an important role, which we would be happy to do to bring an end to the conflict. With regard to unilateral sanctions, we did make it very clear that we are an emerging country and naturally the interests of the Indian people come first with our government and our Prime Minister. India for Indians, Indian interests for the Indian government. Therefore, when a few tried to ask us why we are buying oil or gas from the Russian Federation, we explained that it's not forbidden and that we were only doing a small amount of purchase, which is maybe 5% of what the EU does, just to stock up because the prices were going up. As far as unilateral sanctions are concerned, they have hurt the Western economy and the EU, and this is being increasingly recognized. Only yesterday, the head of the Hungarian government expressed regret about the kind of damage that the unilateral sanctions are doing to the EU economy, and he expressed apprehension as to how the European Union was going to go through a long and bitter winter ahead in case the gas supplies are not at the same level as it normally is during the month from October to March when the winter is at its worst. So I think as you rightly pointed out, our position is not just understood but appreciated. And everybody knows we don't go in for sanction busting, but we have to think of our interests. We haven't broken any laws. We've done everything legally, and we will continue to always put our core national interests first, just like any other country would do, particularly a democracy, which is answerable to the people. And our government is answerable to the people of India, and we have to do what is in the interest of our people.
Ambassador Mukherjee, one more point. Actually, the amendment that has been cleared by the U.S. House of Representatives, it urged the Biden administration to use its authority to provide India with a waiver to help deter aggression from China. So, I mean, it urges. So, do you see any possibility of the Biden administration, notwithstanding this amendment, pushing ahead with the sanctions against India?
Not at all. I don't see that happening at all. I see the Biden administration providing us with a waiver. I do think that the Biden administration played a very important role in encouraging the House of Representatives to vote and decide the way they did. So I don't have any apprehension on that account, particularly because while doing so, the House of Representatives underlined the kind of threat that India faces from China, which is a perception that is fully shared at the highest levels of the Biden administration, their Secretary of State, their Defense Secretary, and the President himself. So I don't have any apprehension at all. I'm sure it's going to go ahead.
The timing of the amendment is really interesting. In fact, the waiver has come at a time, there has been growing criticism of India, at least by certain countries, for its continued procurement of crude oil from Russia, as well as for not condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So what kind of, strategic signal actually this waiver by the House of Representatives sends at a time, in fact, we are seeing geopolitical turmoil that has arisen out of the crisis in Ukraine and India's continued, engagement with Russia, even for military purchases. In fact, Russia has already delivered the first battery of S-400 missiles to India. Second battery is coming. And I just want to ask you, in fact, what is the strategic messaging that this waiver has sent across?
Well, first of all, the criticism of India's principal position on the Ukraine conflict is much more muted now as far as the EU and the United States is concerned. In fact, the United States was the first to adopt a much more flexible position on our posturing on the Ukraine conflict based on our core interests. But the EU also fell in line, and so did the United Kingdom. So I don't think that there has been too much criticism in the recent past weeks on this matter. But you're absolutely right. The strategic signaling is very important, particularly to China, but also to Pakistan, that India is a very important strategic partner of the United States and of the West, and that the United States, as the world's most powerful country with its huge military and economic might, stands squarely with India in facing the threats that India is facing and has been facing for a long time across the line of actual control from the People's Republic of China, a threat that is only becoming more visible as we continue because the Chinese have not pulled back. They have said they would pull back. We pulled back. They have not pulled back. The talks on the border issues are stalemated. And whenever there is any issue of importance, the Chinese immediately make extremely negative comments about India. So all in all, it's not a happy situation that we have across the line of actual control with China. The American reassurances are very welcome. The S-400, our armed forces are of the view, is absolutely essential to secure our positions. And that is exactly what we are getting. We got one installment, as you pointed out, and the next will be coming. And the CATSA waiver means that we don't really have any problem anymore in getting what we had ordered and purchased from the Russian Federation.
Mr. Mukherjee, also I would like you to comment, in fact, whether this waiver also signals that from Russia, if we buy military hardware in the future, the US will not go for any sanctions.
This waiver is specific to S-400. If we want to get equipment from the Russian Federation, which is on the sanctions list, or which needs a waiver, we would have to go through the process a second time. This is not a blanket waiver. This is a waiver for S-400. And as far as I am informed, India is in the process of diversifying its arms imports so that our dependence on Russian arms exports are reduced. The Russian Federation, because of the Ukraine conflict, may not even be in a position to give us the kind of spare parts that we need for existing equipment. And under those circumstances, India already started from the last few years to diversify and to look to other buyers, France, Israel, United States, etc. So I'm sure that we would make a positive effort to look at other buyers also for arms, particularly if the conflict in Ukraine drags on, because then it makes it more complex to get the spare parts. Some of the spare parts factories were in Ukraine actually, and some come directly from the Russian Federation. So we would definitely need to look at diversification, and we are precisely doing that. We have already diversified to a large extent, and we have reduced our dependence on Russian weaponry from 80% to 50%, I'm informed. And it should come down further in the months to come.
Mr. Mukherjee, the S-400 is known as Russia's most advanced long-range surface-to-air missile defense system, and we are procuring 5 batches of this missile system. So do you think, in fact, it will significantly bolster India's overall air defense system when we just get all the 5 batteries, and it will significantly boost India's air power also?
Yes, it will, because if you look at the line of actual control, you would see that India has the advantage that our Air Force can take off and land full load from a nearby base, whereas the Chinese Air Force has to come from Tibet. Their bases are in Tibet for the heavy aircraft. The S-400 gives us that advantage that we need to ensure that there is no aggressive air activity across the line of actual control, and our air defenses are substantially bolstered by this very sophisticated, highly advanced weapon system, which in fact suits also the kind of fighter aircraft we have, which again, many of them have been built by the Russians. So we needed an air defense system which is suited to the kind of fighter aircraft we have, and the S-400 is really, really essential for us to be able to defend our land, our territory, our country from the Chinese.
Ambassador Mukherjee, thank you so very much for an overall perspective about S-400 air defense missile system and the amendment passed by the U.S. House of Representatives giving a waiver to India for the procurement of the weapon systems from Russia, as well as the context of India's emergence as a strategic power and the strategic signaling that the waiver has given. At a time, in fact, we have seen global flux and strategic turmoil arising out of the crisis in Ukraine. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter @AIR News Alerts.
US President Joe Biden declared that the United States would not cede the Middle East to China or Russia in an escalating great power competition for the region, as he met with 9 Arab leaders during his first trip to that part of the world since taking office. Addressing the session with the Gulf Cooperation Council and 3 other regional leaders in Saudi city of Jeddah, he said US will not walk away and leave a vacuum to be filled by China, Russia or Iran. He also outlined a 5-part new framework for the Middle East that included supporting economic development, military security and democratic freedoms. Mr. Biden said that United States is invested in building a positive future in the region in partnership with all of you, and the United States is not going anywhere. The session with the leaders of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Iraq and Jordan came after Mr. Biden met separately with 3 of them, including President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi of Egypt. The Sri Lankan Parliament met in a brief session on Saturday to announce a vacancy in the presidency following the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. According to the local media reports, the session lasted for 13 minutes and Dhamika Dasanaike, Secretary General of Parliament, announced the vacancy for the post of President. Energy Minister Kanchana Vijayasekara said Sri Lanka has received the first of 3 fuel shipments on Saturday. These are the first shipments to reach the country in about 3 weeks. Ousted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's resignation letter was also read out at a special session of the Parliament on Saturday. In his letter, Rajapaksa said he took all possible steps to avert the Sri Lankan crisis. Later in the day, India's High Commissioner Gopal Bagle called on Sri Lanka's Parliament Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abewardena and assured him that India will continue to support democracy, stability and economic recovery in the country. On Friday, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed as the interim president. Wickremesinghe said he would work to strengthen Parliament's powers via constitutional adjustments. The new president is expected to be elected on July 20th and will serve the remainder of Rajapaksa's term, which ends in 2024.
The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, has signed a $20 million partnership agreement with the World Bank to support humanitarian, economic and social development initiatives across all 8 regions and 34 provinces of Afghanistan. In a statement, UNDP said, the new partnership will provide tailored capacity building to NGO SCOs within their work environment and support their quick impact projects or QIPs. Given UNDP's decades of experience and expertise in supporting economic revival and fragile communities, the agency will select 400 NGOs and CSOs based on their capacity for swift outreach, engagement and project design, the UNDP said. The QIPs will aim to enhance access to health, education, agriculture and food security and livelihood activities for vulnerable and marginalized communities, including persons with disabilities. Due to the prolonged conflict in the country, NGOs and CSOs have played a critical role in the service delivery of humanitarian and development activities in hard-to-reach areas of Afghanistan. However, since the sudden political changes in August 2021 and the subsequent departure of major donors, the financial and operational management capacities of the NGO CSOs have worsened. The first batch of 145 pilgrims from Jammu and Kashmir returned from the Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia on Saturday. EIR Jammu correspondent reports that the batch of Hajj pilgrims was received at the Srinagar International Airport by Divisional Commissioner Kashmir P.K. Pole and other senior officials from police and civil administration. The 145 pilgrims, including 80 males and 65 females, returned in a flight that landed at the Srinagar International Airport at 7:50 in the morning. Over 6,000 pilgrims from Jammu and Kashmir had gone on the annual pilgrimage this year.
Southwest Europe continues to reel under sweltering temperatures, with the heat sparking devastating wildfires, forcing the evacuations of thousands and ruining holidays. Armies of firefighters battled blazes in France, Portugal and Spain as Britain braced for extreme heat in coming days, and even Irish forecasters predicted a taste of blistering Mediterranean-style summer temperatures. As French President Emmanuel Macron vowed authorities would do everything to mobilize resources to fight the fallout, the Bordeaux public prosecutor indicated a criminal origin was its main line of inquiry for at least one fire near the southwestern city. In Portugal, 5 regions in the centre and north where temperatures hit a July record 47 Celsius on Thursday before dropping back were on red alert again Friday as more than 2,000 firefighters tackled 4 major blazes. The civil defence said a plane that was battling forest fires in the Bragança region crashed on Friday near Vila Nova de Fogo in northern Portugal, killing its pilot. As of late Thursday, the fires had killed 1 person and injured around 60. Authorities said nearly 900 people had been evacuated and several dozen homes damaged or destroyed. Spanish authorities reported close to 20 fires still raging out of control, with one near Mijas in the deep south, inland from regional capital Malaga, forcing some 2,300 people to evacuate their homes. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez tweeted he was closely following the evaluation of active fires posing an extreme risk.
In Kerala, the high-level multidisciplinary central team is holding consultations with the state government authorities for the second day on measures to contain the spread of monkeypox. The team was rushed to the state after it reported the country's first monkeypox case on Thursday. Meanwhile, the state government has placed all districts on high alert. Special alert has been issued to Thiruvananthapuram, Kollam, Pathanamthitta, Alappuzha and Kottayam districts as people from these districts were co-passengers of the infected person in the Thiruvananthapuram-bound flight from Sharjah that landed in the capital on Tuesday. A driver in whose taxi the 35-year-old infected person travelled to the Medical College Hospital, Thiruvananthapuram, where he is currently undergoing treatment, has since been identified. Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia has said that under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, India is all set to achieve the 200 crore COVID-19 vaccination mark. In a tweet, Dr. Mandavia said the countdown has started to achieve the 200 crore vaccination mark. More than 199 crore 87 lakh vaccine doses have been administered in the country so far. The journey of administering Made in India Covaxin and Covishield vaccines to the citizens of India began on the 16th of January last year.
The Chess Olympiad torch relay arrived in Raipur, the capital of Chhattisgarh, today. The torch relay was given a grand welcome upon its arrival in Raipur. Later, Grandmaster Praveen Thipse handed over the torch to Chief Minister Bhupesh Baghel at a special function held at Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Auditorium. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had launched the first ever torch relay on June 19, 2022 for the Chess Olympiad. In badminton, ace Indian shuttler PV Sindhu stormed into the final of Singapore Open Tournament. She defeated Japanese world number 38 Saina Kawakami 21-15, 21-7 in the semi-finals on Saturday. This is the third time this year that Sindhu has moved into the final of a tournament. Sindhu will now face Chinese shuttler Wang Ziyi in final on Sunday. In cricket, India will take on host England in the third and final one-day international at Old Trafford in Manchester on Sunday. The match will begin at 5:30 p.m. A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils Bundelkhand Expressway in Jalon district of Uttar Pradesh, says it will give major boost to connectivity and industrial development in the region. Over 5 crore people received benefit of e-Sanjeevani teleconsultation, says Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia. US decides not to impose sanctions against India for purchasing 7 S-400 missiles from Russia. US President Joe Biden says US will not cede Middle East to China or Russia, meets 9 Arab leaders during his first visit to Middle East. Aishwarya Pratap Singh Tomar strikes gold at ISSF Shooting World Cup in Changwon. India top medal tally with 4 gold, 4 silver and 1 bronze so far. In badminton, PV Sindhu to face Wang Ziyi of China in women's singles title clash of Singapore Open tomorrow. And in cricket, India to take on host England in third and final ODI in Manchester tomorrow. And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishno Jan by artists from Montenegro.
Para
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.